हरि नाम के आनंद आनंद हरि नाम रे। हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ। हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ। उनमें जपन करो हरि नाम रे। स्मरण स्मरण करो हरि नाम रे। उनमें जपन करो हरि नाम रे। स्मरण स्मरण करो हरि नाम रे। हरि ओम भज रे सदा। हरि ओम भज रे सदा। हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ। हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ। आनंद आनंद हरि नाम रे। आनंद आनंद हरि नाम रे। हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ। हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ। श्रीनंदन गजवदना गौरी नंदन गजवदना। गणेश वरदा मां पाहि। गणेश वरदा मां पाहि। गजमुख गणनाथ। गजमुख गणनाथ। गणेश वरदा मां पाहि। गणेश वरदा मां पाहि। गजानना 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 ओम गजवदना। गजानना ओम गजवदना। गौरी नंदन गजवदना। गौरी नंदन गजवदना। गणेश वरदा मां पाहि। गणेश वरदा मां पाहि। गजमुख गणनाथ। गजमुख गणनाथ। गणेश वरदा मां पाहि। गणेश वरदा गजानना 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 ओम गजवदना। गजानना ओम गजवदना। एकदन्ता गजानना। एकदन्ता गजानना। हेरम्बा गजानना। हेरम्बा गजानना। एकदन्ता गजानना। एकदन्ता गजानना। हेरम्बा गजानना। हेरम्बा गजानना। गजानना 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 ओम गजवदना। गजानना ओम गजवदना। एकदन्ता गजानना। एकदन्ता गजानना। हेरम्बा गजानना। हेरम्बा गजानना। एकदन्ता गजानना एकदन्ता गजानना हेरम्बा गजानना हेरम्बा गजानना 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 ॐ गजवदना गजानना ॐ गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गणेश वरदा पाहि गणेश वरदा मा पाहि गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथ गजमुख गणनाथ गणेश वरदा मा पाहि गणेश वरदा मा पाहि गजानना 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 ॐ गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना रे घन श्याम रे श्याम रे घन श्याम रे श्याम रे घन श्याम रे श्याम रे घन श्याम रे गोविंदा गोपाला श्याम मुरारी मुरानंद लाला गोविंदा श्याम मुरारी मुरानंद लाला श्याम रे घन श्याम रे श्याम रे घन श्याम रे श्याम रे श्याम रे घना माधवा मेरा प्रीतम ब्रजबाला मोहना मेरा प्रीतम ब्रजबाला श्याम रे घन श्याम रे 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 नागरा पांडव रक्षक परिपाला नंदना नागरा परिपाला श्याम रे घन श्याम रे 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 मोरे घन श्याम रे श्याम रे घन श्याम रे श्याम रे घन श्याम रे श्याम रे घन श्याम रे ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Together we will chant the Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verses 10 to 20, please. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verses 10 to 20. Chanting. वीतरागभयक्रोधाः मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तांस्तथैव भजाम्यहम् मम वर्त्मानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्याः पार्थ सर्वशः काङ्क्षन्तः कर्मणां सिद्धिं यजन्त्य इह देवताः क्षिप्रं हि मानुषे लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्मविभागशः तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्याकर्तारमव्ययम् न मां कर्माणि लिम्पन्ति न मे कर्मफले स्पृहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति कर्मभिर्न स बध्यते एवं ज्ञात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वैरपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मैव तस्मात् त्वं पूर्वैः पूर्वतरं कृतम् किं कर्म किमकर्मेति खवयोऽप्यत्र मोहितः तत्ते कर्म प्रवक्ष्यामि यज्ञात्वा मोक्षसे शुभात् कर्मण्यो ह्यपि बोधव्यं च विकर्मणः अकर्मणश्च बोधव्यं गहना कर्मणो गतिः कर्मण्यः कर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृत्स्नकर्मकृत् यस्य सर्वैः समारम्भाः कामसङ्कल्पवर्जिताः ज्ञानाग्निदग्धकर्माणं तमाहुः पण्डितं बुधाः त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासङ्गं नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रयः कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः So we are studying the topic how the Supreme Self, the Atman, relates to the action, human activity. So we have been we have covered the few mantras, verses. We are we have touched the last class, the verse number 14. We will study again to have a quick recap so that we'll follow the thought flow. Namam karmani limpanti न मे कर्म फले स्पृहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति कर्मभिर्न स बध्यते. We will repeat again. Namam karmani limpanti न मे कर्म फले स्पृहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति karmabhirna sabadhyate. Actions do not taint me. Me means the Supreme Self, the Atman, the Godhood within every being. Here the Lord Krishna uses me means the any enlightened master, any person who reached the self, they have only one identity. The identity is the identity of the Supreme Self, the Atman. So once you merged with the Atman, you become Atman, and there is no other identity. The totality functioning, the Lord Krishna maintains that identity, and speaking as it were, actions do not taint the self. So you can simply replace me, me with the Supreme Self, the Atman. Actions do not taint the self, nor have I, the self, a desire for the fruit of action. He who knows me means the self, thus is not bound by the actions. So once a person reaches the self, the actions do not taint such a person, and actions do not affect that person. So self is the source of all actions. Without the Supreme God, the Atman, no action can emerge from the physical body. The body executes actions, but the body cannot act without the self enabling the body to action. But the type of action, the quality of action depends upon the quality of the vasanas, the mind and intellect. But the self is the prime mover, the enabling factor for the body to act. But it does not wish to acquire or enjoy the fruits of action, because self has no desires. It is the individual who is the combination of the spirit and matter, the self and the body, mind, intellect, the jiva, the ego and egocentric personality, the individual is the having that desires, vasanas. Those desires look for the acquisition and enjoyment. But the self within do not have any desire to acquire or enjoy the fruits of actions, nor do actions generated can any way from the self taint it in any way. So having the actions generated from the body cannot affect the self, cannot taint the self, cannot disturb the self. Self is unaffected grace. It maintains, as the Sakshi, he says, the self is immaculate. Immaculate means unaffected, unsullied. It is pure. It desires nothing. It expects nothing. It needs nothing. It affects nothing. So self cannot be affected by the actions generated by the body and affected by the actions. Thus, whoever, once you identify with the Supreme Self, whoever may be, identifies with the Self, the Supreme God, the Atman within, the self within and understands the role of the self, understands why the self is functioning, how the self is functioning, what is the purpose of the self. Once understands in actions, how the actions are generated and how the self is unaffected by the actions produced, gains the total objectivity. He becomes detached witness. Objectivity means a disconnected, detached witness, a sakshi. He becomes an onlooker, an observer. He becomes a witness, a sakshi of his own activities, life's activities. So he desires do not drive such a person of his actions. He performs actions only obligatory duties and responsibilities, but do not have any desires. Desires do not drive him to actions. And also, such a person who identifies with the self, actions do not taint him, do not affect him or bind him, because he is the self. Self is free from any vasanas, actions, results. So he is unaffected. He functions in this world. Such a person who identifies with the Supreme God, the Atman, he becomes disconnected from the worldly affairs because he is totally merged with the self while acting. Therefore, he functions in this world like an actor on the stage. An actor who is acting on the stage, he knows the difference between his true identity, which is the particular real personality, what he is, and the character role he is playing on the stage. He clearly understands the distinction and he plays the character role, what he is supposed to play on the stage to the best of his ability. But his actions on the stage in any way do not affect his original personality, true identity. His actions on the stage in no way affect his true personality. He has no interest in those actions performed on the stage or the fruits thereof. He remains a ever disinterested, disconnected, and detached from the stage. So, similarly, and so the person who identifies with the Supreme God, the Atman, he always maintains that he is the self in and through all his actions executed in the world. He never forgets his real identity of the Supreme Self. Thereby, he has no interest in the actions executed as well as the results of the actions. He is not concerned. So he identifies with his real self within. His identification totally liberates him from the affectations of this world, the sufferings of the world, and nothing in the world influences him, affects or binds him because of the total identity he maintains. He is the real self, he is the Atman. He has nothing to do with this Veka and the waking world. The whole world is a stage. All men and women are mere players. They have their exits and the entrances. He maintains the total detachment from this world. So he is merely functioning based on his result, his desires, without affected by them. He has his identity of the self makes him free from the worldly sufferings and worldly pleasures, and he becomes a sakshi, a disinterested witness all those what's happening in the world. He is a silent witness, an observer, maintains a total objectivity. So he has neither the desires which propel him to act, nor he desires for the results. He wishes for the results and is no interest in the fruits of action, and neither the actions do not bind him, they do not affect him or influence him. That is the state of the person who maintains the true identity, that he is the self, the Atman. The self has no interest in the desires, no desires for any action, nor it has a desire for objecting action. But without the self, no human being can perform any action. But the actions emerged by the vasanas, the individual, and the desires which produced by the body produces the actions, and the individual egoistic personality, which is the human being, which he identifies with the self, he is free from this bondage. That's what it is highlighted. Actions do not taint the self. Any amount of activities do not taint, do not blemish the supreme God, the Atman. Once the person identifies the Atman, he is free, he says. Now we get on to the mantra 15, verse 15. Evam jnatva kritam karma purvairapi mumukshubhihi kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvaih purvataram kritam. Evam jnatva kritam karma purvairapi mumukshubhihi kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvaih purvataram kritam. Having known thus, having known what? The Supreme God, the Atman, and its role in relation with the actions. Because the self has no desire for any action, but without the Supreme God, no action can be executed. So having known this, known the role of the self while acting, action was performed even by the ancient seekers of liberation. You cannot stop acting. Action is a must. Inaction is death. So the vast majority of human beings do not act. They are being lethargic, inactive. And the people who take up activity, they act with selfish and self-centered motives and suffer the stress and strain, worries and anxieties all through life. Nobody understands the true action, the technique of right action, which is a selfless action, action dedicated with the idea of the supreme self, the Atman. So there is no other interest. So action was performed. You should perform actions constantly. There is no break, there is no weekend, there is no vacation, nothing for the physical body. You must be dynamic. Till your last breath, you must be acting. But the question is the modus operandum. You got to understand the propelling factor. So here he is telling the ancient seekers constantly performing action of liberation. Therefore, you also perform action as the ancient did in olden times. So the ancient seekers, ancient means the good old days, the Satya Yuga, the people just did what they ought to do. They did not look for any selfish or unselfish or motives. No motives. Just as cloud gives rain, the earth gives vegetation, the rose gives fragrance, the The earth rotates around the sun. All the creation, entire creation, works selflessly without any motives except a human being because of ego and egocentric desires. The moment the individual identifies with the Supreme God, the Atman, while acting, he got the right technique. The actions constantly go on, but the mind is anchored with the self. The identity of the Supreme Self is maintained. That is the technique which brought them the peace and prosperity as well as the total liberation from this bondage of the world, and got the infinite liberation, infinite peace and happiness, which is the freedom from this bondage of this world. So the ancient seekers of liberation they know the subtle relation between the self and action. They clearly know the self is no doubt is the source of all actions. The God is the source of every action we are doing. Without God, there is no action can emerge. The finger is moving up and down because of the self propelling the finger to move. Without the self, the finger cannot move. But the self has no desire to move, to act, or not any objection to action. So that is the quality of the self. So the ancient seekers of liberation knew the subtle relationship between the self, the Atman, and the action, between the self and action. Having gained this knowledge, having gained this clarity of how the self is relating with the action, with the work, having gained the knowledge by they continued, the ancient sages and saints, seekers, spiritual aspirants, they continued to engage themselves in dynamism, in actions. They worked tirelessly throughout the ancient times. You see the great Adi Shankaracharya, he worked tirelessly, barefooted and bareheaded, from the length and breadth of India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. He was working and spreading the Vedantic knowledge to entire India. That is the dynamism they displayed, they exhibited actions, but their mind and intellect completely absorbed in the self. They have no interest whatsoever. There is no selfish interest nor the unselfish interest. There is only one focus, just to get back to the self identity, realization of their own supreme self within. So Krishna appeals to Arjuna in this verse. What is that appealing? That feelings and respect for tradition, because he explained in the previous mantras the logic and reason and intellectual appeal. Now he is appealing his feelings of the mind, because he has got a deep respect and regard for the ancient seekers, ancient traditional persons, the four ancestors, forefathers. So referring to them, which he has got a great feeling, he is asking them to follow their tradition, follow their footsteps to the wise men of the past. So in earlier verses, he had appealed to Arjuna's reason. Now, having thus prepared the Arjuna's intellect as well as the mind, both reason and his feelings both are catered, so that the Arjuna will get up and take care of the bow and arrow and fight for the righteous cause, to do his obligatory duty as a kshatriya, is the focus given by Lord Krishna. So Krishna concludes powerfully, therefore, Arjuna, you must act, you should never shirk, escape from the obligatory duty, just like your ancient sages and ancient seekers of your past. They acted tirelessly, they acted continuously, even though they have no interest, no desire, because they identified with the Supreme God within, but they never stopped acting. You must act as the wise men did in the past. So the self, the Atman within is supreme, the whole, the complete, the infinite peace and bliss and immaculate, pure. It is the source of all action. Without the self, the Atman, the action cannot emerge. It is the primeval source, just as electricity is the source for every electrical equipment. Similarly, but it has nothing to do with the quality of action, type of action, because it has no desire for any action. There is no good action, bad action for the self. Self has no interest in whatsoever actions you produced, but it has nothing to do with any action. Just as electricity gives power to every electrical equipment, but it has nothing to do with the expression it produces. It has no interest whatsoever whether the bulb gives light or not. It has no interest, or the fan rotates or not. It has no interest, or fridge cools. It has no interest. It gives power, but the engine, the equipment is that which acts. Nothing to do with the self, the nothing to do with the electricity. The same way, the quality and the type of actions emerged from the personality, from the individual, from the body actions, nothing to do with the supreme God within. It does not desire, self does not desire any action, nor to perform any action, nor to avoid any action. Neither it has interest in the fruit of any action. So it has neither desire nor desire for the fruit of enjoyment in the interest of acquiring or enjoying the result of action. There's no interest. Self has no interest. The result of actions are do not in any way. So even though actions are executed, results are coming, the results will not affect the self. It only affects the individual who is jiva, the egoistic personality, that the limited personality gets affected by the results. With the body, mind, intellect affected by the results and actions, nothing to do with the self within. The self you are the Atman. You are not this individual, this personality, this limited identity which you believe yourself to be. You are that supreme God, the immaculate self. You are the immaculate pure self. You have nothing to acquire or enjoy in this world. The acquisition or enjoyment is only for the material equipments of the body, mind, intellect, and limited individuality. Nothing to do with that infinite self, because you are paripurna. You are the self which is full, complete, supreme, all full, whole. Therefore, you don't have any dearth, any limitation in the self. If you maintain that identity and get to that self while acting, you reach that impersonal, unlimited, unconditioned state of peace and bliss. With this knowledge clearly instilled in you, established in you, absorbed in you, you are that Atman. To become the self, you must act without any involvement in the affairs of the world. With that understanding, you perform your obligatory duties and responsibility. If you are an engineer, do engineering. If you are a plumber, do plumbing. If you are a carpenter, do carpentry. If you are a lawyer, do law, practice law. If you are a doctor, do medicine, surgery. Whatever actions you do, do not touch you, because you are the self. You maintain that real identity like the actor on the stage. When an actor always has the understanding, is maintains that memory that he is his true identity, acting on the stage as a particular, performing a character role, in and through all the comedies and tragedies of the particular characters he maintains and he performs to the best of his ability. His original personality, his real personality, not at all affected. Whatever happens on the stage doesn't affect him, whatever positive or negative, whatever, there is no desires or there is no enjoyment of the fruits of the actions performed on the stage will anyway has any interest in the real personality. So that is the detachment. So he is totally, the actor is totally disinterested, disassociated, disconnected, and detached from the stage and happenings on the stage. Similarly, friends, you are living in this world. The world is a stage. You got to understand you are the supreme self functioning in this personality, executing his these obligatory duties as the Veka, and you got to perform these actions to the best of your ability, but you have nothing to do with the actions or the results. You just maintain the total objectivity, a Sakshi Bhav. That is the like an actor on the stage. You got to play the role in life, whatever the life, as a father in the family, or husband to wife, or son to the parents, and citizen to the country, or the teacher to the students. Different character roles you got to play in this world. Discharge your duties and responsibilities by maintaining the constant identity that you are the supreme God, the Atman. Nothing to do with this, all these roles you play. No interest in any actions of the any character, nor the enjoyments, acquisition or enjoyment of the results of these roles, executing the actions. Neither the actions or results don't bind you anymore. You got to be free. Whatever happens in this world, nothing will touch you. That state is called the identity of the Supreme Self, advised to Arjuna by Lord Krishna. You maintain, take up your role and detachedly perform action, but with detachment, your obligatory duty as best as you can. Through such action, you will reach the ultimate state of liberation by clear understanding that you are the self, and self has nothing to do with the world, with the obligations, with the actions, with the results of action, the total things what happening. With that understanding, one day you will get out of this, the bondage of this world of suffering and stress and strain and worries, and you will enjoy the supreme peace and bliss and complete liberation, which is example is given in the beautiful poem in the Even This Shall Pass Away is the great poem which addresses this actor on the stage like the king in Persia who is living a kingly life, but while he is executing all his obligatory duties and responsibilities, he has no interest in whatsoever as a kingdom. He just understands it is just a, even this shall pass away. Everything passes away, nothing stays, he says. So the beautiful poem, he explains the various stages the king is experiencing in his life. So let us restudy again so that we will get that strength of objectivity while we are performing our day-to-day activities in this world, discharging our duties and responsibilities. Once in Persia reigned a king who, upon his signet ring, carved a maxim true and wise, which if held before his eyes, gave him counsel at a glance, fit for every change and chance. Solemn words, and these were they, even this shall pass away. So once in Persia, which is Iran, reigned a king. He was ruling a kingdom. A king was living who, upon his signet ring, his ring, he put a ring on his ring. He graved a maxim. He carved. He written a maxim. What is the maxim? True and wise. That is very fact, and it is a very wise saying. What is that? If it held, which if held before his eyes, whenever he sees, he looks at it, gave him counsel at a glance. It gave him a strength of understanding, the clarity of thought, fixation on the changeless entity within the king, which is the self, gave him counsel at a glance, fit for every change and chance. It is fit for every situation, every environment, every moment, every transaction with the world, whatever, every perception, every action, every emotion, every thought, every, you know, experience. It has given him a great counsel. What is that? Solemn words, and these were they, the great words. What are the words? These are the words. Even this shall pass away. Nothing stays in the world. Nothing stays with you. That is the great counsel, great knowledge given by that signet ring. Now he goes to the experiences. First experience: trains of camel through the seas, trains of camel through the sand brought him gems from Samarkand. Fleets of galleys through the seas brought him gems and pearls to match with these, but he counted not his gain. Treasures of mine are main. What is wealth? The king would say, even this shall pass away. He earned a lot of wealth from the sand, from the shore, from the land, as well as from the seas, the ships, everything. He earned lot of acquired money and earned a lot of wealth for the kingdom. Fleets of galleys through the seas, trains of camel through the sand. So the trains of camel means camel in the desert. There used to be only transportation vehicle is the camels. So through the camels, they used to transport and trade, business, and earn a lot of money. Brought him gems from Samarkand. Fleets of galleys through the seas brought him pearls to match with these. So pearls and diamonds and every wealth has come, but he counted not his gain. Whatever he earned or whatever he acquired, amount of whatever wealth he gained, he has no interest whatsoever. He just did his obligatory duty with detachment, with this understanding. Treasures of the mine are main. What is wealth? He used to question what is the role of the wealth in life. The wealth, he used to answer to his soul himself. He says, the king would say, even this shall pass away. The wealth, the quality of the quantity of the wealth, irrespective of whatever the wealth a person can acquire, it cannot substitute the happiness he is enjoying. The wealth can provide physical comforts to exchange the money to purchase sense objects. It cannot provide emotion. It cannot provide love. It cannot provide knowledge. For the mind, for the intellect, the wealth is completely useless. It is only for the physical body and sense objects. That too, when the body is only fit. So, the wealth has no role to play in providing knowledge. Wealth has no value in the providing love. True love cannot be purchased. True knowledge, you can buy a library, but you cannot get knowledge of any subject by wealth. You got to develop wealth by yourself, develop knowledge by yourself, not by wealth. So wealth has a very limited application in life. One has to realize in the spiritual path. It hardly applicable for self edification, self discovery. It is completely unconnected, unconcerned. Next, therefore, the great king, even though he is reveling in the wealth, he is anchored to this great understanding. Even this shall pass away. Mid the revels of his court, at the zenith of his sport, when the palms of all his guests burned with clappings at his jests, and he, amid his figs and wine, cried, "O loving friends of mine, pleasures come, but not to stay. Even this shall pass away." So he has got a very good joys and happiness moments in the court of people, in the as subordinates, as subjects on the country. He is enjoying the court at the zenith of the sport. He is enjoying the sports and palms of all his guests burned with clapping at his jests. Whatever he said, they are all appreciating and boosting them. He amid his figs and wine, he is enjoying. Figs means nice retreats, nice feasts and wine. Everything is, happily indulging in sense objects, senses. He, amidst his figs and wine, cried, means he shouted, oh, loving friends of mine, oh, my dear friends, pleasures come. He's enjoying the sensual pleasures in the height of wine and every enjoyment. He says to them, pleasures come, but not to stay. No pleasure is permanent. Every pleasure has a beginning and end in this life. So you can have a limited capacity to enjoy this world. This life is a procession of joy and sorrow, everything passes away, nothing stays permanent. So he understands, the king understands, and he maintains the objectivity of even this shall pass away. Pleasures come but not to stay, even this shall pass away. Now he meets the woman, the lady fairest ever seen, was the bride he crowned as a queen, pillowed on his marriage bed. Softly to his soul he said, though no bridegroom ever pressed the fairer bosom to his breast, mortal flesh must come to clay, even this shall pass away. So the lady fairest ever seen, the most Miss Universe he married. The king married a great, beautiful lady, but he understands not in the old age, while on the marriage bed. He was the bride he crowned as queen. He married and he made her a queen. Pillowed on his marriage bed. On the marriage bed, he is talking to himself. He is not talking to the person. He is talking to his own soliloquies. Means he understands. What is that? Though no bridegroom ever pressed fairer bosom to his breast. When he is hugging the in the marriage bed with that queen, he talks to himself, mortal flesh must come to clay. This all body is made up of 5 elements of earth, space, air, fire, water. Is all nothing but modification of the flesh, blood, pus, and all the bones and everything is nothing but this physical body, what is attractive. He understands this clarity. With this, while enjoying with the company of the lady queen, he is remembering his real identity and not get carried away by the attractions and temptations of the sense object or being. That he comes to that clarity of understanding, even this shall pass away. He just no interest in identifying with the person, but he identifies with the understanding of the supreme self within. So with this he maintains the objectivity, therefore he maintains the mental peace while enjoying the every aspect, every experience. Now he talks about the fighting, the sorrows in the fighting on the field. So he talks about the pains, sufferings in the battlefield. Fighting on a furious field, once a javelin pierced his shield. Soldiers with loud lament bore him bleeding to his tent. Groaning with his tortured stride, pain is hard to bear, he cried. But with patience, day by day, even this shall pass away. So he is fighting on the furious field. He is gone to the battlefield where there is a bloodshed, war, and piercing, killing, beating. Once a javelin pierced his shield, a javelin gone into shield, he gone into his body. Soldiers with loud lament bore him bleeding to his tent. He was bleeding and feeling pain when the javelin gone into the body, groaning from his tortured side. Sometimes you experience sickness, ill health. Sometimes you are healthy and happy. In the sickness, in ill health, when you're suffering from disease, you must maintain. Every experience is a limitation and it will pass away. Neither sickness will be permanent nor the health will be permanent. Everything is pass away in this universe, in this world, in this life. So no experience is permanent, he says. Groaning from his tortured side, pain is hard to bear, he cried. The pain is very difficult to bear, no doubt, but with patience, with going through that courage and conviction to experience and that going through that experience, but with patience day by day, even this shall pass away. The pain also will go in time, nothing will stay, he says. So that is the clarity and objectivity the king maintains. Now the name and fame he got, and he talks about the great name and fame he experienced. Towering on the public square, 20 cubits on this air, rose his statue carved in stone. Then the king, disguised unknown, stood before his sculptured name, musing meekly, what is fame? Fame is but a slow decay, even this shall pass away. He talks about his own name and fame, whole world is talking about him. Towering on the public square, 20 cubits in the air, almost 30 feet it is, rose his statue carved in stone. They put the stone statue in the center of the junction road. Then the king, disguised unknown, he disguised himself and went to see his own statue in the middle of the night to see, stood before his sculptured name. They wrote the name and everything in the big statue. He himself saw and he started talking to himself, musing meekly, what is fame? What is the actual definition of fame? The fame is but a slow decay. Any amount of big name or fame is just a passing phenomena. What in the time nothing stays, it is slow decay. People forget you over a period of time. What happened to the galaxy of great sages and saints and great kings and great empires? Nobody remembers any one of them. The time passes away, everybody forgets them. That is called fame, is nothing but a slow decay. Even this shall pass away. Everything is passes away in this life. This is what the name and fame also. People should not give undue importance. No doubt, name and fame are very much appreciated, but you should not be unreasonably expecting and get crushed by that name and fame. That's what the Shakespeare says. Reputation is an idol and most false imposition, often got without merit and lost without deserving, he says. Reputation is an idol and most false imposition. People talk about the reputation without knowing the person's merits or demerits. They just talk about them and raise the name and fame and give the proper, they praise him to the sky. The name and fame shoot up without the very source of that is idle talk. People talk about each and every person. Reputation is an idle and most false imposition. Imposition is a repetition of talk, often got without merit. Mostly people get it without merit, without proper qualification, without proper effort, without proper eligibility, and lost without deserving. Sometimes you lose it without you deserve it, really. So this is the nature of the name and fame. Once you realize, you don't give undue importance, unreasonable importance, or identify with it, is the even this shall pass away. The king maintains that objectivity. Ultimately, the death also connects you. Death also comes to you. What is the death? Struck with palsy, sore and old, and waiting at the gates of gold. Struck with palsy, sore and old. You struck with palsy. Palsy means the old age, there is a body inactive and senile. Almost palsy means paralysis. It doesn't work as much as you work in while you are young. Palsy, sore and old. It becomes sore, means pain. Everywhere there are pains and aches and become old. Waiting at the gates of gold. Gates of gold means waiting to go to heaven. Gold represents heaven, means after death is the symbolism. Waiting at the gates of gold, said he with his dying breath. He is talking to himself on the dying breath. Life is done, life is complete, but what is death? He is questioning, what is this death? Then an answer to the king, answer has come to the king. Fell a sunbeam on his ring. There is a sun ray fell on the his own ring, where he put this maxim, even this shall pass away, showing by a heavenly ray, even this shall pass away. It is showing the heavenly ray, means the great wisdom which is heaven, means the great peace and bliss he maintaining while experiencing the deathbed. Also, death also will not stay, it will pass away. So life and death and life and death, this procession keeps going on. Joy and sorrow constantly changes, but the wise person who identifies with the supreme God, the Atman, will remain unaffected in and through all the fluctuations of this world. Like an actor on the stage, he maintains the true identity. The identity, the Theodore Tilton, the great, the poet who given this poem, Theodore Tilton. The Theodore Tilton is presents this king of Persia as a picture of detachment. The king carved a great maxim on his ring. Even this shall pass away, rooted in the highest values of life. The highest values, the greatest value is realization of the self. The values are unselfish to selfless. The more selfless you are, the more value you have. He lived a life of true renunciation, a true detachment. He would not identify with the best or worst of things in the world offered to him. Whatever world provided, the happiness or sorrow, honor or dishonor, health and sickness, heat and cold, joy and sorrow, rich or poverty, nothing he is interested. Whatever happened in the world, he maintained that identity. He would not identify with the best or the worst things that his world offered to him. The king was bountifully blessed with his wealth and woman, name and fame. The king was always maintained the wealth and woman, all the fluctuations. The king was bountifully blessed with the wealth and woman, name and fame, everything he received from the world, but he is not interested in identifying and get crushed by them, get elated. He is not interested, but all along he maintained his serenity. He maintained the poise, the detached witness, an actor on the stage, a silent witness, a subjectivity in life. The world is an admixture of fortune and misfortune. The world is an admixture. The world is a pairs of opposites. The world puts you on always the pairs of opposites, profit and loss, heat and cold, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor. These are all the fluctuations, always affect the physical body, the mind, and the intellect, not your supreme self within. If you maintain that identity of the self, these fluctuations will not affect you. The pleasure and pain, vice and virtue, the inevitable pairs of opposites in life are inexhaustible. They never end, they will be inexhaustible. Your mental equilibrium, your mental poise, your mental fixation and intellectual poise should remain unaffected to these fluctuations. You have to develop an objectivity, strength of the intellect in such a way that this mental equilibrium is maintained in and through all the fluctuations of the world. You become established in that state. You become established in the state of the witness, silent witness in and through fluctuations. That is the supreme witness of Sakshi. You become established in that state by your attunement to the higher state of Supreme God, which is the higher values. The great king of Persia achieved that exalted state by cultivating unselfish and selfless values. So the only purpose in human being is to fix the higher ideal, a goal beyond one's selfish and self-centered interest, to get true peace and true success and true bliss, and ultimately to reach the enlightenment and freedom from this bondage of the world and affectation by the world is the technique given by the great poem and these great mantras what we studied in this two, the 14th and 15th this verse as well. So having known thus means once you understand the self is unaffected by whatever happens, having known thus, action was performed. You should not stop acting. You must be active and dynamic, constantly executing your actions without thinking about the results or motives. Swami Ramtirtha says, why are you fellows have motives to work? Just do what you ought to do in life. Do your to the best of your ability. You are a singer, sing. You are a teacher, teach. You are a preacher, preach. Do whatever. You are a player, do go for game. Never bothered about the success or failure in the outcome of that actions. Just do what you ought to do. That is the great guidance. And keep the mind and intellect fixed on the Supreme God, the Atman, because the self has no desire to act. Actions keep going on, but the desire automatically reduces and it converts into obligation. Once your intellect is fixed on the higher ideal, the same action, whatever you are acting, the action becomes worship, prayer, and generates peace and bliss, because you are not acting for with desire, with ego, but you are acting for the action's sake, no other interest. I just got the talent of teaching, I just got the talent of singing. Just do whatever your swadharma, your activity, and get out, because your mission in life is to merge with the self. Your focus should be on the Supreme God, the Atman, no other interest. So the self is the source of all actions, because actions cannot execute it, cannot come out without the Supreme God supporting. The self enlivens the physical body, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and see functioning because of the God Atman functioning within you. The body is perceiving and acting. So your focus should be not on the sight or sound or smell and taste or touch, whatever the perception, but what enables you to perceive. You withdraw from the focus on the landscape, on the perception, to what perceives you, what helps you to perceive. Then you shift your interest from the world to the self within. Your mind, no doubt, feels various emotions. Your intellect conceives various thoughts. But what enables the mind to feel is the Supreme God, the Atman. You shift your interest and attention on the self while feeling any emotion. So you feel that emotion for the sake of the self, not for the sake of emotion only. Then you are shifting towards the Supreme God. You are going to fix your identity on the self, and you reach the self soon and become liberated from this bondage of these actions and results of the actions, and they do not affect you anymore. This is the gist of this mantras 15, 14, 15. We will continue the mantra 16 in the next class. Thank you very much. Hari Om.